This is completely unacceptable. You will fix it now, or I will buy this shop and tear it down brick by brick.
Howard and Sons?
The insult hits before the door stops swinging. Do you even know what you're doing? The words slice the air like a sharp blade, clean and cold. Metal clinks stop mid-roll. A socket bites the concrete and spins until the sound dies. The garage holds its breath. You can smell the oil, the hot rubber, the metallic tang that lives in the walls. Malik stands over the open hood, hands black with grease, fingers shaking by themselves like they want to speak but know better. He doesn't look away. He doesn't fold. His eyes are calm, the way a lake is calm in the middle, even when the wind slaps at the edges. He sees the billionaire first as a voice, then as a suit, then as a man who forgot what work looks like up close. The man fills the doorway like a storm in a pressed shirt. His shoes are too clean for this floor. His watch throws a stripe of light across the ceiling like a siren. Behind him, thunder cracks the sky so hard the window glass twitches, as if the whole world is listening in. Mr. Howard steps forward, chest high, chin set. The vintage Rolls-Royce glows under the white shop lights, paint like cream, chrome like a mirror, pride like a crown. He stands next to it, as if he was born leaning against it. A week, he says, each word falling heavy, each word a stamp of power. 1 week. For this? He points at the car, like it offended him on purpose. His voice echoes off steel racks and metal walls, and the sound makes the room feel smaller, like the walls are closing in to please him. The crew goes silent in that practiced way men learn when money walks in angry. Lila pretends to read a clipboard she already knows by heart. Rico wipes the same wrench again and again, chasing a shine that was there 5 minutes ago. Even the radio, low and scratchy in the corner, seems to get shy and fade behind the noise of rain hitting the bay doors. Malik doesn't answer, not yet. He memorizes the engine's breath, keeps count of the cough that comes every third beat, hears the thin whistle under the cough, the story most folks miss. He thinks about the part that sits in a crate across town, late because a delivery truck flooded out on River Street. He thinks about the decisions made to protect the heart of the car, not just the look of it. He thinks about long nights under this hood, with a lamp throwing a circle of light, and the smell of coffee, gone bitter at 2 a.m. He could say all that. He could talk about how you don't rush a vintage engine if you plan to keep its soul. He could explain that a shortcut is a small lie that grows up and crashes a story. But he knows a man who enters yelling didn't come to hear truth. He came to win. So Malik keeps his mouth shut and lets silence be his answer. "Answer me," Mr. Howard snaps, stepping closer as if space itself needs to know who owns it. "Do you even know what you're doing?" There's a smile hidden in his anger, a small curl at the edge that says he expects the room to laugh with him. No one does. Air hangs heavy. A drip from a coolant line hits the floor with a tiny tick, 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 like a slow clock. Malik feels the stare, the weight of it, the same weight he felt as a boy when grown men looked at him like a problem about to happen. He swallows, his hands steady. He lifts his gaze and sets it on the man's eyes. It is not a challenge. It is a window. Quiet. Unbroken. Dignity standing up straight without moving. Something shifts. Not the lights, not the rain. Something in the billionaire's face. For a breath, the mask of certainty slips. He clears his throat. He straightens the cuff of a shirt already straight. "This is a reputation on wheels," he says, softer but still sharp. "I didn't come here for lessons. I came for results." He drops the words like coins on a counter. His tone makes the floor feel cold. He looks past Malik to the wall schedule, to the parts board with tags and dates, to the work orders pinned with magnets and hope. He sees the mess and calls it chaos. Malik sees the same and calls it life. 2 worlds in one room, touching but not mixing. Lila tries to speak, careful. "We're waiting on a..." Mr. Howard lifts a hand. The gesture is small, but it pulls the sound out of the room like a plug in a tub. "No excuses," he says. He turns back to Malik. "I pay for speed. I pay for skill. I don't pay for silence." The words hang like a threat. Outside, thunder rolls again, lower now, like a growl that doesn't need to prove anything. Rain runs in thin silver lines down the garage door windows, turning the street beyond into a smear of light and shadow. Malik inhales. He hears the engine's story whisper again. He hears his mother's voice from long ago. Don't speak every time someone throws you a rope. Not every rope is for rescue. Some are for dragging. He sets the ratchet down with care, as if it might bruise. He wipes his hands on a red rag until black streaks bloom like dark flowers, then fade to gray. He looks at the rolls with respect, and at the man with the same. He opens his mouth and closes it. Not today. The dignity is in the work. He leans back over the engine. He checks a line, then a screw, making small notes in his head the way a musician might hum under his breath to stay in tune. The crew watches from the corners of their eyes. They expect a break, a blow-up, a word that sparks more words. But Malik keeps choosing quiet like it's a tool only he knows how to use. Mr. Howard's breath gets louder in the silence. He looks for something to touch so the world feels like it's obeying. His eyes land on a red metal box, scarred by time, sitting by the lift like an old soldier. It is a toolbox, big, heavy, with corners worn smooth by years of hands. He steps toward it without thinking, the way a man walks toward a picture he recognizes in a stranger's home. The paint is chipped. The handle is wrapped in black tape where the metal bit a palm one winter. On the front, carved deep, are words that took patience and a pocket knife. Howard and Sons Automotive. The letters are not pretty, they are honest, cut into the paint so they can't be wiped off with pride or shame. He freezes. The room tilts, just a little. The name pulls his eyes like gravity. His throat tightens like a fist around a memory. He reaches as if to touch the groove of the H, then stops, afraid he might feel his father's laugh, trapped in the metal. "Where did you get this?" he asks, but the question is a whisper, meant for ghosts. His voice doesn't sound like a man who owns buildings. It sounds like a boy behind a counter, counting change, while a bell over the door rings and a radio plays a song about summer. He sees sawdust from wooden crates floating in a square of sunlight on a shop floor miles and years away. He sees a large hand guiding his small one to line wrenches by size. He sees a back bent under a hood, grease on knuckles, wedding band dull with work. He sees the day the sign came down, the day the Sons, in the name, lost its place to a boardroom. Malik watches him see it. He doesn't rescue him. He doesn't twist it. He lets the moment do its job. His face doesn't change. His chest rises and falls like a slow tide. The rain becomes a hush, not a roar. The crew senses the shift and looks down at their boots, at their hands, at the floor that holds all of them up the same way, rich or poor, loud or quiet. Mr. Howard steps back from the box like it burned him, but the heat is inside. He looks at Malik not as a delay or a cost now, but as a man who lives where his father once stood. Shame walks across his face and tries to hide. He straightens, snaps his mask back on, but it doesn't fit right anymore. His voice comes out rough. "Finish it by Friday," he says, and for the first time, the demand sounds like a hope. He reaches into his jacket and sets a business card on the toolbox, careful not to cover the carved name. "If you need anything," he adds, and the words are heavy, like he had to lift them up from a deep place to say them. No one moves. The fluorescent lights hum. The old radio finds its courage again and whispers a chorus about making it home. Malik nods once, not a bow, just an agreement with the future. He slides the card into the top drawer with the feeler gauges and the photographs of engines rebuilt and lives improved by small, steady choices. He does not say, "Thank you." Not yet. The thanks belongs to work done right, not to a promise made quick. He turns back to the car, to the cough he will calm, to the history he will keep alive without fanfare. The billionaire lingers one beat longer than his pride wants him to, as if waiting for his father to step out from the back and tell him what to do. No one does. He leaves. The door swings open to the rain and the city's wet shine. The storm grumbles like an old man settling into a chair. The room exhales. Rico lets out a breath he didn't know he held. Lila presses the clipboard to her chest as if it has a pulse. Malik reaches for the right socket and finds it by feel. He He leans in until the engine fills his world. The cough is there, stubborn but smaller now that the air has changed. He listens with his eyes closed, and the corners of his mouth tilt up the way they do when he knows the fix is close. He doesn't think about the man's title or the watch or the car's price tag. He thinks about a name cut into red paint and what it means to carry a story you didn't buy. Outside, the rain slows to a whisper. Inside, time holds a note. The billionaire's footsteps fade into the street and into questions that will not let him sleep. In the garage, under steady light, a black man works in silence that speaks louder than shouted power, and the name on the box waits, carved deep, daring the past and the present to face each other again. The storm is not over. Not in here. Not in him. Not yet. Mr. Howard could still smell the oil on his hands, though he'd barely touched anything. That red toolbox haunted him, the letters carved deep like they were meant to wound and remind at the same time. Howard and Sons Automotive, his father's name, his own bloodline. The sound of that storm still echoed in his ears as he drove away from the shop, rain streaking down the windshield, like tears he didn't know he'd held back. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, but it didn't help. The streetlights smeared gold across the wet pavement, and for the first time in years, he felt small inside his own world. That night, sleep refused to come. He lay awake in a glass-walled bedroom high above the city. Everything sleek, expensive, cold. The hum of machines below replaced the crickets his father used to whistle to in the country. He closed his eyes, but the smell of motor oil and sawdust broke through the silence, dragging him backward in time. He saw himself at 10, sweeping the floor of that same shop with a broom taller than him. He remembered his father's voice, warm and strong. "A man's hands tell his story, son. Don't ever be ashamed of what they touch." His father's hands were cracked, but steady. His laugh filled the shop, louder than any engine. Back then, Mr. Howard didn't dream of skyscrapers or power. He dreamed of being just like him. But years have a way of sanding down dreams. He remembered the night they sold the shop. His mother called it moving up. His father called it moving out. The buyers shook his father's hand, promised they'd keep the name, but within a year the sign came down. The garage became just another place with fluorescent lights and numbers on invoices. And now, decades later, Mr. Howard had walked into that same building, rebuilt, repainted, reborn under his father's name, and he had humiliated the man who ran it, the man who carried that legacy with quiet pride. Days passed, but the memory stuck like grease on skin. The billionaire tried to bury himself in meetings. He sat in conference rooms lined with glass, surrounded by men who nodded before he even spoke. He made deals, signed contracts, raised profits, but it all sounded hollow. He caught himself staring at his reflection in the window one night. His suit looked sharp, his cufflinks gleamed, but his eyes looked tired, empty. Somewhere deep down, he heard his father whisper again, "A man's hands tell his story." He looked down at his own hands, smooth, untouched by labor, unmarked by time. He couldn't remember the last time he'd built something with them. Meanwhile, across town, Malik was still at work. No bitterness, no gossip. Just quiet, patient movement. Wrench to bolt, cloth to chrome, breath to rhythm. The others in the shop talked about the billionaire's outburst, voices rising and falling like a storm of opinions. "Man, I would have told him off," Rico muttered. "You let someone talk to you like that?" But Malik only smiled, wiped his hands, and said softly, "You don't fix a man by shouting. You fix what's broken and let him see it work." His silence became its own kind of power. His calm was a sermon. Every click of the socket, every spark of the welder was a reminder that dignity doesn't shout, it endures. Mr. Howard couldn't resist it. 3 days later, he found himself driving back to that same garage. He told himself it was just to check on the car, but deep down, he knew he was looking for something else. The rain had stopped, but the air still felt heavy with what had been said. When he stepped inside, the room changed again, just like before. Tools went quiet. Conversations died mid-sentence. Malik looked up from under the hood, his face calm, his eyes steady. No anger, no grudge, just focus. He wiped his hands, not hurried, not nervous, the same way his father used to. Mr. Howard cleared his throat, searching for words that wouldn't come. "How's it going?" he asked, the question too small for what it carried. Malik nodded once. "Almost there," he said simply. The tone wasn't cold. It was clean, like water over stone. Mr. Howard took a step closer, studying him. There was something familiar in Malik's movements, in the way he touched the engine like it was alive, sacred. "Where'd you learn?" Howard asked after a pause. Malik looked at him, then at the old red toolbox behind him. "Right here," he said. "Your father taught me before he sold the place." The words landed soft, but they hit deep. Howard blinked. He hadn't expected that. "My father taught you." Malik nodded again. "Said I had steady hands. Said this place would always need hands like that." Silence spread between them, thick, full, heavy with what was gone. Howard looked around. He saw the walls his father had built with borrowed money and sweat. He saw the same corners where he used to hide, pretending to read while his dad worked. The smell hadn't changed. The rhythm hadn't changed. Only he had. For the first time, the billionaire's voice cracked. He never told me about you." Malik shrugged lightly. "He told me about you, said you were smart, said you'd take the name somewhere big." He smiled a little. Not bitter, just sad. "I guess we both ended up carrying it different ways." That broke something in Howard. The shame he'd been holding since that stormy night came rushing in like floodwater. He looked at Malik's grease-stained hands, the ones steady over the engine, and he realized something simple and brutal. His father would have been proud of Malik, maybe more proud of him than of his own son. The hum of the fluorescent lights filled the space where words failed. Malik tightened the last bolt and wiped the rim clean with a rag. "Try it," he said, handing over the keys. Howard hesitated. He turned them slowly, and the engine roared to life. Smooth, perfect, strong. The sound filled the garage like applause. Howard's throat burned. He reached into his pocket for his wallet, but Malik shook his head. "Already paid for," he said. "By your father, years ago." Howard froze. He didn't understand. Malik leaned against the fender, his tone low, steady. "He gave me this toolbox. Said if I ever used it right, I'd never owe anyone a thing." Howard looked at the red box again, the carved letters glinting under the lights. He felt tears threaten, but pride swallowed them. "You've done him justice," he said quietly. Malik just smiled, wiping his hands again. "So have you," he said, just in a different way. Howard stood there for a long time, the engine purring beside him. In Malik's quiet grace, he saw his father's lessons come alive again. The same humility, the same faith in work, the same belief that worth isn't written on checks or stitched into suits. It's written in how you treat people. He realized then that Malik hadn't just repaired his car, he'd repaired something inside him. When Howard finally stepped outside, the sky was clear, the city washed clean by rain. He stood under the fading clouds, breathing in air that tasted like forgiveness. The glass towers in the distance still gleamed, but for once, he didn't feel the pull of them. He thought of his father's words. A man's hands tell his story. Maybe it wasn't too late to rewrite his own. And in that still moment between guilt and grace, one truth settled deep in his chest. Power fades. Wealth fades. But respect, the kind built by honest work and humble hearts, never does. The first sound that broke the morning silence was a deep, steady rumble, low and confident, like a lion waking up after a long sleep. The Rolls-Royce was alive again. Its purr filled the garage, smooth and rich, not a cough, not a stutter, just music made of steel and care. Malik stood over it with his rag hanging from his pocket, eyes half closed, listening like a doctor checking a heartbeat he knew by memory. Across the shop, Mr. Howard froze in the doorway. His breath caught before he realized it. For days, that car had mocked him with its silence, a reminder of how his words had burned bridges he didn't mean to light. But now it ran better than new, and for the first time, He didn't know what to say. He walked closer, the sound of his polished shoes swallowed by the hum of the machine. He ran a hand along the hood, like it might answer him back. "It's," he began, but stopped, the word too small. "How did you fix it?" His voice cracked through the air like a man trying to steady his pride. Malik didn't rush to answer. He wiped his hands slow, one finger at a time, leaving faint streaks of grease that told stories money could never buy. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, low, carrying something old and warm. "The same way your father used to." The sentence dropped like a spark into dry leaves. Mr. Howard blinked. His mouth opened, then closed. "My father?" he asked, as if the word belonged to someone else. Malik nodded once. "He gave me my first job, said I had steady hands and a good heart." The world stopped spinning for a moment. Even the engine seemed to hush itself, settling into a softer hum. Howard stared at the man in front of him, the grease on his skin, the steady posture, the quiet eyes that looked at him without fear or hate. Behind Malik, the walls seemed to move. Not literally, but through Howard's eyes, they changed. He saw memories crawling out from the corners, whispering. There was the workbench where his father used to sit after hours, polishing tools and humming old songs. There was the dent in the wall from when he and his brother raced toy cars and crashed into a shelf. He saw sunlight streaming through the same window his father once leaned against, hands black with oil but face glowing with pride. Howard turned slowly, his throat tight. "You worked for him," he said, more to himself than to Malik. The mechanic gave a small nod. "He taught me to listen, not just to cars, but to people. Said most broken things tell you what they need. You just gotta respect the silence long enough to hear it." The billionaire's chest rose and fell, the air in his lungs suddenly heavy. He looked down at his hands, smooth, soft. They hadn't touched a tool in years. He used to be proud of that, proof that he'd climbed out of the grease and into greatness. But now, under those flickering shop lights, it felt more like proof he'd lost something. The smell of oil, the clang of metal, the warmth of sweat earned honestly. These were the things his father carried like medals, and he had traded them for glass walls and boardrooms that didn't remember his father's name. Malik didn't move. He just stood there, waiting, giving him space to hear his own ghosts. Howard finally spoke, voice thin. He was a good man." "The best I ever met," Malik replied. His tone wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, but sure. "Didn't matter who you were. He treated you like family. Told me one day this place would outlive both of us." He gave a small smile, eyes dropping to the red toolbox nearby. Guess he was right. Howard followed his gaze. That box again. The same carved letters stared back at him. Howard and Sons Automotive. He reached out and brushed his fingers over the grooves, tracing the name like he was touching skin he hadn't felt in years. His eyes watered before he could stop them. "I didn't know anyone still used his name," he said softly. Malik's answer was simple. Names mean something when they come from good hands. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them thickened, not with anger, but with understanding. Mr. Howard saw it all so clearly now. This man, the one he'd scolded like a fool, wasn't just fixing cars. He was keeping something alive. Every bolt he turned, every tool he lifted, every quiet hour spent under the hood was an act of preservation. Malik wasn't just rebuilding engines. He was rebuilding memory. Howard stepped back, guilt rising like a tide he couldn't stop. "I treated you." He couldn't finish. The words trembled and fell apart before they reached air. Malik stopped him with a look, not cold, not forgiving, just steady. "You treated me like I didn't matter," he said, voice low but not bitter. "But I've been treated worse by life, sir. I don't hold hate. Hate doesn't build things. It breaks them." The billionaire's jaw tightened. He nodded, but his eyes stayed down. For the first time, he didn't feel like the richest man in the room. He felt like a boy again, standing before his father after breaking something precious. His voice cracked when he whispered, "You sound like him." Malik smiled faintly. "Maybe that's because I listened." The hum of the Rolls-Royce filled the silence that followed, smooth as breath. Howard looked at it, then back at Malik. The car wasn't just fixed, it was reborn. Every sound, every vibration carried care in it. He realized then that Malik's hands didn't just repair metal, they restored respect. They gave back what pride had stolen. Outside, light broke through the clouds. It hit the windows just right, painting the shop gold for a brief moment. Howard blinked into it, squinting like a man seeing truth for the first time in years. He wanted to say something, something that could balance the scales, that could erase the sting of his own cruelty. But words seemed too small. All he could do was stand there, humbled by the simplicity of a man who had no need to prove anything. Finally, he found one word, heavy and honest. "Thank you." Malik nodded once. "Take care of it," he said, gesturing to the car, but his eyes carried a deeper meaning. Take care of the name. Take care of what was left. Howard understood. He could feel it. The weight of legacy, the responsibility of decency, the truth that respect isn't inherited, it's earned over and over again. He turned toward the car, running his hand over its curve. The engine purred steady under his touch, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to him anymore. Malik wiped his hands one last time, placed his tools neatly in the box, and closed it with a soft click. That sound echoed louder than any applause. As Howard reached for the door, he paused. He looked back once more at Malik, standing by the car, framed by the same walls his father once called home. In that moment, the billionaire saw something he couldn't buy: peace. He walked out slowly, each step echoing the truth his father had lived by. A man's worth isn't in what he owns, it's in what he builds. The sunlight hit his face, warm and blinding. He blinked hard, but he didn't look away. Somewhere behind him, the red toolbox waited, carved deep, unchanging. A name, a memory, a lesson, written in metal and time. And for the first time in his life, Mr. Howard understood what it really meant to carry a legacy, not in wealth, but in work. Because money can buy engines, but only honor can make them run. The rain had washed everything clean. The streets glistened like new glass, and the air smelled of metal and second chances. Mr. Howard stood outside the shop for a long moment before stepping in. The same garage that once echoed with his own anger now hummed with something different: peace. Malik was there, as always, bent over an engine, lost in the quiet rhythm of his craft. The billionaire's shadow fell across the concrete, but Malik didn't look up right away. He didn't need to. He already knew that presence, the sound of polished shoes, the faint smell of cologne that didn't belong in a place like this. Only this time, the air around Mr. Howard carried something new, not pride, not power, something softer, something closer to regret. "Malik," Howard said, his voice low, uncertain. The sound barely made it past the hum of the machines. Malik straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. His movements were calm, practiced, but his eyes held no trace of surprise, only quiet understanding. Howard took a breath, the kind a man takes before a confession. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope, heavy, thick, but trembling slightly in his grip. He placed it on the workbench next to a pile of worn-out spark plugs. "For the repairs," he said, "and for what I said before." Malik's gaze fell on the envelope, then back to the man before him. The silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. "You didn't have to," he said finally. Howard gave a small, uneasy smile. "I did," he replied, "but that's not why I'm here." His hand moved again, this time reaching into his coat pocket for something else. A small silver key glinted in the light. He held it out, his hand shaking. "This belongs to you now." Malik didn't reach for it. He looked at it, then at the man offering it, and something deep flickered in his eyes, a mixture of disbelief and quiet sorrow. "What's that supposed to mean?" he asked softly. Howard swallowed hard. "It means I'm giving this place back. The building, the name, everything my family took when we sold it. I want to rebuild it the way it should have been. Under your hands, under your honor." His voice cracked at the edges. He wasn't a man used to being unsure, but in that moment, every word felt like it was walking barefoot on glass. Malik said nothing. He looked at the key for a long time, the metal catching the faint reflection of his face. The weight of the gesture was clear. It wasn't charity. It was repentance. But even repentance in the wrong hands can sound like guilt trying to buy peace. He took a slow step forward and gently pushed the key back toward Mr. Howard's palm. "Legacy isn't about ownership," he said quietly. "It's about honor, and honor can't be given. It has to be lived." The words landed like thunder without the sound. Howard froze. He hadn't expected grace. He'd prepared for anger, maybe even rejection, but not this. His throat tightened as the hum of engines filled the air again, wrapping the moment in something sacred. Malik turned back to his workbench, hands steady, voice calm. "Your father knew that. He built this place with pride, not for profit. He taught people like me what real work means. You don't have to give it away, Mr. Howard. You just have to respect it again." For a long moment, the billionaire didn't move. His eyes drifted over the shop, the old red toolbox with its carved letters, the worn floorboards polished by years of footsteps, the faint smell of oil and honesty mixed in the air. It all felt alive, real. And in Malik's quiet focus, he saw his father again, the same pride in the small things. The same patience when no one's watching, the same unshakable dignity that money could never teach. "I don't deserve this place," Howard said finally, his voice cracking like the sky before rain. Malik looked up, meeting his gaze without judgment. "Maybe not, but you can still learn from it." His words weren't sharp, but they cut deep, the kind of truth that doesn't wound, but wakes you up. Howard nodded slowly, his eyes burning. He closed his hand around the key, holding it like something fragile. "I used to come here as a kid," he said softly. "Used to sit by the window and watch my father work. I thought he was wasting his life. I thought real power was up there." He pointed upward, toward the invisible skyline of his high-rise empire. "But I was wrong. It's here. Always was." Malik didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said enough. The sound of a ratchet clicking in the distance filled the air like punctuation to a lesson well learned. Howard walked to the center of the room and turned in a slow circle, taking in every inch of the shop. The walls that had heard his father's laughter, the air thick with history, the smell of stories that never made it into ledgers. The memory was heavy, but not cruel. It was forgiving. He turned back to Malik one last time. "I'm sorry," he said again, this time without the shield of formality. "Not just for that day, for forgetting what mattered." Malik gave a faint nod, a small acknowledgement that forgiveness doesn't always need to be spoken. "Then don't forget again," he said quietly. For a long while, they just stood there. Two men, one rich, one humble, both tied to a name, carved into red paint and memory. Outside, the clouds began to drift apart, letting the sun spill in through the wide garage doors. The light landed across the hood of the Rolls-Royce, like a blessing. Howard stepped closer to it, listening as the engine purred, steady and calm. It sounded alive, not just because Malik fixed it, but because Malik believed in it. The billionaire finally understood. Malik didn't just repair cars. He repaired meaning. He rebuilt dignity in a world that kept breaking it down. And now, standing there, Mr. Howard felt the storm inside him settle. The guilt, the pride, the distance between who he was and who he wanted to be. It all softened. When he left the shop that day, the air felt lighter. He walked slower, each step carrying something quieter than peace, deeper than relief, humility. Behind him, Malik was already back to work, the sound of tools clinking in rhythm with the heartbeat of the world his father once built. Howard stopped at the door, turned back, and took one last look. Malik was bent over the engine again, the sunlight catching the grease on his arms, making it shine like gold. For a moment, Howard smiled, not the smile of a man who owned something, but of one who finally understood what it means to belong. He stepped out into the open air. The sky was clear. The storm was gone. But in its place, something stronger remained, a lesson he would never unlearn. Because respect, he realized, can't be bought or traded. It's earned in the small, honest acts no one sees. And no fortune, no empire, no legacy is richer than the hands that build with love.